Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is David Novak. What's that? Somebody named Jack? Hold on, I don't know any Jacks. FedEx delivery apparently. Well, the mails have been so slow with all of the Shake-Timber missives going around. What is this? Oh, this is an invitation from Jack the Rambling Raconteur, inviting me to take part in the Shakespeare Journey Tag. It just so happens I have all of my Shakespeare books out. This may turn into something like a show and tell. There are 11 prompt questions. Well, maybe a little more. Some of the numbers have more than one question. And then the 12th, which is to tag some folks. Let's dive right in. Number one, before I go into this, I've been watching this tag going around, and I've thought about doing it, and then I said, no. I looked at the questions, and I said, no, I can't do it. I really don't have anything to say for any of these. However, given the honor of this invitation, I have to proceed forth with this. The tag was created by Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading, Jason at Old Blues Chapter and Verse, and Nicole at A Day of Small Things. I am not sure anymore which ones I have seen and which ones I have not. I was just glad up until now that I was not tagged in this, but now I am equally glad, if not more so, that I have been tagged, because it feels like a booktube bonding experience. Number one, what was your first experience reading Shakespeare, and what was it like? I don't know. I have no idea. We had to read Romeo and Juliet in school, and I don't know what that was. Now, I don't know if it was the year that the movie came out. It cannot have been. I wonder if it was in grammar school, because my recollection is that we were bused to the junior high school, which would, in those days, was the school that covered 7th and 8th grade. So maybe when I was in 6th grade, they bused us to the junior high school to see the movie Romeo and Juliet, directed by Zeffirelli, Franco, I think. And given how faulty memories can be, it is entirely possible that we were in junior high and they bused us to a theater for a special showing. That probably is even more likely, but I just don't know. Earlier this year, a court determined that the nude scene, which featured young Romeo and Juliet, was not pornography. I can tell you that amongst us youngins at the time, that little glimpse was the main focus of the entire movie. I have not seen it since. So I assume that we read Shakespeare at that time. I have no memories of that. In high school, some people were reading Julius Caesar, but I think that was in the year that instead of the regular English class, I had a year of journalism. And I think the journalism class skipped that kind of stuff, but my memory could be faulty. So, well, let us go on. Has the reading of a Shakespeare play ever brought you to tears? No. What play and where were you? Non-applicable. Number three, Are there any people who have played a significant role in your Shakespeare journey? Yes. And I'm going to go with a dead author for this, and that would be T.S. Eliot, the great literary critic. And I would say that until I read Eliot, Shakespeare was a figure of reverence amongst everybody. You had to bow down in worship. And T.S. Eliot's essay, and I can't say which essay, he brings up Shakespeare in more than one essay, of course. His essays brought Shakespeare down to the human level. I see a dog getting ready to do something, so pardon me if I have to yell. T.S. Eliot, kudos to T.S. Eliot. Number 4, do you have a favorite book or film about Shakespeare? I absolutely have a favorite book about Shakespeare, and that is Introducing Shakespeare by G.B. Harrison. It gives you everything you need to know about the biographical Shakespeare. Actually, it's divided quite nicely. So the chapters are Shakespeare's fame, materials for the life of Shakespeare, the scholarly approach to Shakespeare, Shakespeare's age, Shakespeare's company, Shakespeare's theater, the Shakespeare canon, the development of Shakespeare's style. Only the development of Shakespeare's style is probably not so enlightening, but it's a very helpful introduction. Books have probably been written since that update this, but what is good about this is it cuts to the chase. There is no nonsense. It tells you what you need to know. So, for example, Shakespeare's will is reproduced in whole. So if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of what can be known about Shakespeare, and then interesting stuff about what Shakespearean theater was like. So there's these famous illustrations of the theaters of the time. And he talks about the different types of theaters, and it's just really a marvelous book. Let me quit waxing rhapsodic on Harrison's book. Which character in Shape most resembles you, and in what way? I think this is a bit of an unfair question because, to bring Terence into it, nothing human is alien to me. I believe that when we are watching Shakespeare, we most likely are able to identify with any of his characters or every one of his characters. Just for the sake of a quick answer to the question, I will just say Hamlet for his indecisiveness because I have felt indecision in my life. However, in other situations, that is not the case at all. No, I am not Prince Hamlet, nor was meant to be. Am an attendant lord, one that will do to swell a progress, start a scene or two, etc. So no, I really am an attendant lord, not Prince Hamlet. But I know that feeling of indecision within myself. Which play would you most like to see performed in a theater, and why? I will say Timon of Athens, because it's a play that I have not seen. I don't believe I've seen Pericles, and I don't come on, guys. I don't believe I've seen, there it went. What did I say? Timon of Athens, Pericles. There's another one that I haven't seen, and now it's gone. You have to realize that in Chicago, there is ample opportunity all the time to see Shakespeare, generally for free. So I've seen a lot. Unfortunately, it's not always the best production, our Shakespeare Repertory Theater, which is now just, I think, Shakespeare Chicago. A marvelous theater, but director Barbara Gaines was probably the worst Shakespeare director you could imagine. She could not present Shakespeare without adding to it. So I forget which was which. Lear had to be all about Frank Sinatra, and so there were way more Frank Sinatra songs than there were soliloquies. Hey, come on, guys. Another one had to do with magic tricks, and so it was chock full of magic. Excuse me a second. We'll see how long that lasts. And that might be bad enough. I don't think anything could be worse than a Robert Falls production at the Goodman, and I don't think the Goodman was known for Shakespeare productions, in which it was one of the comedies, and at the end, the heroine, the female lead, comes out onto the stage, and somebody rushes, some kind of thug, rushes in from the wings and stabs her, and there's blood all over, and then curtain. So that's what you wind up with Shakespeare in Chicago, often. I've had great productions in Chicago, mind you, but usually the smaller theater companies. So there was indeed a production of Romeo and Juliet with an all-female cast done by Footsteps Theater. It's wondrous to see Shakespeare done with a single-gender cast. I've seen other very good Shakespeare productions outside of Chicago. So, Timon of Athens, it seems kind of like basically people sitting around the table, and he gives everybody what they want, and then he becomes poor or something. It's kind of a dumb play, but you know, that's how it is. What actor in his prime would you have most liked to see play Hamlet? I thought about this, and for one, I don't really know actors, and I would say, just for want of a better, Basil Rathbone, who, of course, most of us would know as Sherlock Holmes, not as an actor playing Sherlock Holmes, but as Sherlock Holmes. Deliver your favorite speech or soliloquy from Shakespeare. Well, I don't know that there could be any other answer than this, and this is the obvious one. From my favorite Shakespeare play to pre-answer number 11, Macbeth. So this is the scene where Macbeth hears notice of his wife's death. So I'll read the whole little bit antecedent to it. You know these lines most likely, but I'll just sort of set the stage. I won't give the character divisions. It's Macbeth talking with the guy who comes in to tell him. He goes out and then he comes back. Shrieks without. What is that noise? It is the cry of women, my good lord. I have almost forgot the taste of fears. The time has been my senses would have cooled to hear a night shriek, and my fell of hair would be at a dismal treatise, rouse and stir, as life were in't. I have supped full with horrors, direness familiar to my slaughterous thoughts cannot once start me. Wherefore was that cry? The queen, my lord, is dead. She would have died hereafter. there would have been a time for such a word. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. The reason that I push coming to shove that I would choose Macbeth as my favorite play is because it is the quickest. It cuts to the chase. There's none of that superfluous buffoonery, not much of these long-winded soliloquies that go on and on. It's just action, which in a Shakespeare play is a blessing, and it doesn't have a goofy premise like King Lear or many others. Let me see. Well, I will finish the questions and then I will just go on and spout. So do any of Shakespeare's plays intimidate you? No. What tips would you share with readers who are coming to Shakespeare for the first time? My tip generally to everybody is not to read them, go to see them. For a long time now, I have not read plays. I see them, and actually I've given up mostly seeing plays at this point as well. So I should give you a little bit of my experience really with Shakespeare. Here and there when I was young, I did pick up books of Shakespeare's play. And this was actually my favorite set, the Pelican Shakespeare, the first set of Pelican Shakespeares. And back in the day before the internet, it was hard to come across these things. And so you tried to grab them when you could. And then you had to somehow remember which ones you had and which ones you didn't. And I, at one point, tried carrying around a list with me. It didn't work, and I never was able to get a full set. And then, at some point, I had a big book purge, and I got rid of them all and got had gotten a one-volume Shakespeare. And it was actually the same one that Jack showed in his video, Jack the Rambling Raconteur. In fact, I'll put that link and all other necessary links into the description box. And it did not sit well with me over time because the paper was really crappy and it turned really bad fast. Now, it is of the same imprint as this complete Oscar Wilde, which is a much beloved book of mine also. And for some reason, it's starting to show its age, but this has held up much better than that Shakespeare edition ever did. So I was never smitten with the Collins edition of Shakespeare as Jack was, and eventually I got rid of it. Now, probably got rid of it when I found this, the complete Pelican Shakespeare. What did I pay for this? $3. It's always a joy when you get a bargain like that. And this has everything. This, alas, is the second edition, I guess, of Pelican. So the general editors, Stephen Orgel, I guess, and A.R. Brownmuller, whereas the first one was Harbidge. Alfred Harbidge, I think. Yes, Alfred Harbidge. This edition of the narrative poems is the book itself is edited by Richard Wilbur, and he has a wonderful introduction to it. I don't think I've ever seen the sonnets, but I believe they did not choose Wilbur for that, which, que lastima, it would have been a great thing had Wilbur done that also. I'll show you the sonnets. I've always used the St. Martin's Press edition of Shakespeare. It's not a scholarly thing, but you really don't need that. And here's Sonnets from the Portuguese in the same imprint. I think they've put out a couple of other books trying to duplicate the success of Shakespeare, like some poems of Keats and stuff, but I've never bothered with any of those. You know, around early 1990s, I decided I was going to write plays. And so what I did was I decided to study Shakespeare. He's a great source if you want to learn how to write poetry. You just take his works, and you don't pick up a book by some asshole like this, you know, that's mostly nonsense. I do not own this book, and I do not own those books either. They belong to my partner, and I just brought them out for kind of show and tell. No, you just go to the works themselves, and I remember it was an intensive couple of months when I was reading Shakespeare, reading pretty much all of the plays, but when you, I don't even know what was the method that I used, but when I got done, it reminded me of Leonardo's drawings where he takes the human body and displays it in cross sections. So I kind of, by reading all of the plays at once, switching around, I got something of a cross-sectional view of Shakespeare's plays. And so I figured out from that what the method was. It's not as though Shakespeare uses a special technique. Drama is what it is. He's the rarity of one who does both comedy and tragedy, which, according to Socrates, everybody should be able to do, at least Socrates in the Symposium. In real life, I don't think Socrates is correct. I think tragedy and comedy are very distinct differences. I always wrote comedy, and God only knows if I could figure out how to do tragedy. So that's that. But so having a cross-sectional view like that, one thing that happens is you lose the grasp of characters. People tend, even one of the questions, which character do you identify with? Ultimately, the play is the thing, and all of the characters come about merely to serve the dramatic structure. And so for that, you don't, what is it called? You don't project into them. You don't even project that they are living beings. Of course, they have to, what is the word? They have to present something of a facsimile of a real human being, but as the writer, you can never view them as such. And that was quite an education for me. And I don't know where I was going to go with that, but so my reading experience with Shakespeare is probably very different to the norm, and I'm probably more than when Donald Trump got elected president, I quit writing plays because the type of audience that my work demanded no longer existed. And probably sometime before that, I quit reading Shakespeare. When you get to be an old man, you at some point can say farewell to certain things. I remember a friend of mine reading the I Ching, and then at some point she said, I've finished with this book, I can put it away now. It's a Chinese book of philosophy, the I Ching. So that's been my relationship with Shakespeare. If you are a playwright, there is none other. Years ago, when I was in Taiwan, I remember picking up plays by Bertolt Brecht, and I was amazed. I thought, this is the first playwright I've seen whose characters, and here I'm contradicting myself, seem living and breathing like Shakespeare's. Of course, time has not served Brecht well, and that plus a number of really bad productions I've seen make Brecht pretty much unwatchable for me. Shakespeare, not at all. I can still watch him easily. I don't do it unless there's some exceptional reason for me to do it, because I've probably seen most of the plays. As I say, in Chicago, at least during my span, there was untold opportunities. Now, since COVID, our theater community here, particularly in the Edgewater neighborhood, seems to be dying a slow death, and now we are dealing with a refugee crisis in the city. So between that and climate change barreling down on us, it's very hard to see that the theater community can revive. And having seen the Goodman Theater's production of Tommy, The Who's Tommy, it's hard for me to see how any kind of low-level theater, particularly, the type of Edward Albee thing with 3 characters talking, or even David Mamet, how that kind of thing can fly anymore when what the audience demands is sheer spectacle. It may happen, but I just don't see, unless the full catastrophe comes on and we're, back to living in caves and so forth. And then I think Shakespeare and other good playwrights will be revived. But given the way things are going, at least in the U.S., I just don't see it. Perhaps in some other country where you get some kind of elite that really makes a thing of old-fashioned theater, perhaps it could be allowed to persist. In the ancient world, that's what theater was. I mean, in Shakespeare's day, it was for everybody. Well, not necessarily Athens. I mean, it was men in Athens, but thinking about Roman theater, yeah, it was an elite thing. So what have I done? I've dissed on Harold Bloom. I don't hate Bloom. I once saw him on Charlie Rose. This was an old TV show. And Bloom had some very perceptive statements to make about what a garbage book Harry Potter was. I think only one Harry Potter book had been out at that time. I'm not sure. And I really liked hearing Bloom say that. He did not join the chorus of accolades that was ubiquitous at the time. So I don't think he is a man without integrity, but he is of the sort that venerates Shakespeare to the extent that he believes Shakespeare is or was a god. And so, again, for criticism, go to anything by T.S. Eliot before you check out this chap. And then I did a video not that long ago because I had found a couple of books pertaining to Shakespeare in my box. I still have not looked at them, and the day after I made that video, I was back at that box, and there was a third book that had appeared. And so I will just show them because I think it's fun. Well, I'll do it one at a time. Shakespeare Without Tears. Have not read it, can't speak of it. Shakespeare and the Idea of a Play still looks like a good idea for me. And then Shakespeare's Progress. People back in the day took this stuff very seriously. Of course, if you want to be a playwright, that veneration only gets in the way. It can only impede you. That's why I suggest for learning Shakespeare, or for learning to enjoy Shakespeare, especially without deciding you want to be a playwright, the best avenue for that is to see a live performance. And if not, you can go and see, YouTube has all kinds of film versions that were done. They are of differing quality. Back in the day, Laurence Olivier was considered the god of Shakespeare. I don't know that his films are very watchable anymore. For my time, the most recent one that I've seen that I liked was, I don't know who the director is, but it's the one wherein Frances McDermott plays Lady Macbeth. So that's of Macbeth, and Denzel Washington, I believe, is Macbeth. Now, he's a very, very understated Macbeth, and the reason you watch that film is for the McDermott performance. It's also, I don't know what the word is, the production of it, the sets are very interesting of themselves, but and I'm not going to say that Denzel Washington is bad. I think he does a good job, but it's just, I would not want to be on a stage with Frances McDermott, let me put it that way. Talk about being upstaged. So with that, thank you very much, Jack, for the invitation. Now, I'm still relatively new at all of this, and so I'm not very comfortable about doing too much tagging. If she does such tags, I will tag Hannah at Hannah's Books. And I just saw, just before I began filming this, I saw Mark at Book Time with Elvis doing this tag, and he seemed a little downcast because nobody had tagged him. So I am going to tag Mark at Book Time with Elvis retroactively, and I will put a link to his video and invite you to go and watch his video. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.